There's some dissension going on within the Ukrainian ranks. The people there are fighting amongst themselves about whether they should collaborate with the Russians or whether they should try to, impede them. And so I wouldn't be surprised if there's a little bit of sabotage going on. It's very hard to tell from the news reports who is shelling, but there seem to be some pretty good indications it may be the Ukrainians. There's also confusion too because there's a very large coal burning plant immediately adjacent to the six power reactors, nuclear reactors. And that coal burning plant supplies electricity to other parts of Ukraine and also to the nuclear plant. They do seem to be out of coal, by the way, so they're important to keep the plant running, the nuclear plant running, but they're not up and going. So it's kind of a confusing situation.
Yeah, it sounds like it. When you say Ukraine is sort of debating whether to cooperate with the Russians, do you mean to keep the plant functioning and undamaged?
I think both sides realize that the plant, each unit is worth about 7 billion US dollars. So there's a tremendous incentive to keep the plant safe, online, not damage it. And of course, there's an incentive not to contaminate the region because it would hurt both sides. So my feeling right now is the squabbling that's going on in the background, which you can see in tweets and things, shows you that some people want to keep their jobs and collaborate with the Russians, and others are saying, let's not collaborate with these guys. They're here as occupiers. Yeah. Let's see if we can't impede them.
The reports of the damage, have you been able to glean just how damaged it is, or is it, to the point where it is impeding the plant?
The way you would impede a plant like this is not to attack the reactors. That's pretty crazy for everybody involved. It would be to attack the auxiliary systems like transformers, power lines, and things like that, so that the plant can sit there and be capable of producing electricity but can't send it to anybody. And you might get to the point where the plant is in some danger of having capability to make itself safe if all the electricity coming from the outside is gone. What they would probably depend on then is diesel generators.
How fail-safe are these plants from attack?
The containment structures for the 6 reactors are very strong and would resist a lot of attack. I'm not a military expert. I don't know how big a shell you'd have to fire at it, but that's probably, again, not where you'd want to make an attack if you wanted to cause problems. The other case is I'm not sure how much discipline there is among the troops. And if the troops get carried away and don't realize that some of those ponds that you see around the plant are filled with highly radioactive spent fuel, if they were to damage those fuel ponds at some point, it would certainly cause a local mess. It's not going to be anything like the Chernobyl disaster, but it would not be pretty.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what everybody has in their mind when you're talking about nuclear reactors and how devastating that was. What is your sense as to who is actually running the plant and their level of expertise?
The Russians are in charge. They're deciding how much electricity to make, I think, and where to send it. And of course, they've got a problem that most of the transmission lines go through Donbass, which they're still fighting over, so they're having a problem there. All of the operators, apparently, are Ukrainians. They're the people who worked there before the war. And so some of them are very anxious to keep their jobs and to be cooperative, and others don't like the Russian occupiers. And you can see that in blogs and tweets that are coming out of there. There is confusion.
We saw some agreement brokered by Turkey with regard to grain leaving Ukraine. Do you think it would be important to have independent inspectors just keeping an eye on this plant?
You're probably talking about the IAEA, and the IAEA has a problem there. They have a legal requirement to account for nuclear material, make sure there's no diversion of nuclear material, which under these circumstances is highly, highly unlikely. But they do have a legal requirement to go in. And as I understand it now, the Russians have invited IAEA to come in, and the Ukrainians are saying, this is our plant on our territory, you're not invited. So the IAEA is in a very difficult position. And while you say, well, why don't they go? There's a war going on there. And so IAEA inspectors who are civilians, like I used to be, are unlikely to want to get on a plane, fly to Kiev, and then rent a car and drive there.
Yeah.
It isn't going to happen.
You know, how concerned are you about the disruption of energy supply and what that might mean in this long-going, what seems to be becoming a long-running conflict?
Again, I think both sides are very interested in preserving the spoils of war. And the spoils of war include the 4 Ukrainian nuclear power sites. There are many other reactors in Ukraine. And we noticed just the other day that the Russians captured a very large coal-burning plant, and they captured it intact. So I think the goal is to keep the electricity pumping, but not to send it to other parts of Ukraine. It's to send it to Crimea and back to Mother Russia.
But then what could that mean for Ukrainians as winter approaches?
It's bad news. It's bad news. The whole system is breaking down, and there may be large areas, I'm certain there are large areas that don't have any electricity now, and that's going to be very difficult in the wintertime. So it's a bad situation. I've tried not to be alarmist about attacks on the reactors, but I think we should be very, very realistic that this situation is going to put a lot of people in a very uncomfortable.
Yeah, so it could be really a weapon of war to a degree, targeting Ukrainians.
Yes, they're weaponizing electricity, and as we saw earlier, they're weaponizing grain. So yeah, it's a nasty little war. But I do think it's becoming a war about electricity. And you look at what the Russians are doing, what they are capturing and capturing intact versus, say, destroying the Azov steel plant, which I guess they didn't need. So they destroyed it and all of the infrastructure around it and many other factories. Electricity seems to be getting special treatment.
Bob, appreciate your expertise as always. Thanks so much.
Nice to see you again. Bye-bye.